you everybody for joining us at the Wednesday, June 4th, 2014 Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority monthly meeting. Cindy Clark. Here. Russ Collins. Bob Gunzel.
Here.
Roger Hewitt.
Here.
Joe Lowenstein. Here. Al McWilliams.
Here.
John Moa.
Here.
Risha Narayan.
Here.
Keith Orr.
Here.
C. Powers.
Here.
Sandy Smith. Here. John Splitt.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We start off with audience participation, and we have nobody signed up today. We can move right into reports from city boards and commissions. We have Mr. Ray Detter, the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council. You have 4 minutes, Ray.
Thank you. Watching my watch. Tomorrow is going to be 70 degrees and sunny, so that once again I want to extend the invitation to the and also to the staff of the DDA to come to the annual Downtown Spring Party. That's tomorrow, June 15th, starting at 6 p.m., 120 and 126 North Division. All indications are it's going to be a perfect day, and a lot of indications there's going to be a lot of people there, including all of these candidates who want to be elected this year. At last night's CAC meeting, members and guests discussed two important downtown issues. We reaffirmed our support of City Council's wise decision in January to make changes in D1 zoning that will correct the mistakes that were made in the past. The Planning Commission has been instructed to provide recommendations to do that. Last month, some of us spoke at the Planning Commission meeting that voted unanimously to recommend changing the zoning in South Main and William Street to D2, that's 60 feet. We objected, however, to another change passed by a 6-3 vote that would allow a height of 100 feet within that D2 district along Main Street if a series of 10-foot setbacks were provided off of South 4th. Allow a height of 100 feet along there if those setbacks were put in. And that is to protect the residential houses that are on South 4th. We believe that would best be done by a planned project sort of approach in the downtown. Of course, this is the first step. City Council will eventually decide, but ultimately we would like to see a situation in which planned projects are possible. Not planned unit developments, but planned projects to allow the same thing, but not having it built into the zoning. We will continue before City Council to advocate for strengthening the power of the Design Review Board, Planning Commission, City Council to produce better designed buildings in the downtown that do not have negative impacts upon their neighbors, particularly in scale and massing. We strongly support the hiring of a competent urban planning consultant to advise Council and the Planning Commission in ways to make the best decisions in shaping the final approved zoning recommendations. At least one member of the Citizens Advisory Council, as well as other people, will be present at all the future Ordinance Revision Committee meetings of the Planning Commission so we can provide input if that's possible. But most of our meeting last night, and I'm not going to devote most of my talk to it, was devoted to a discussion of the ways in which the footing drain disconnect ordinance lawsuit might affect the downtown area. The FDDP lawsuit, as it's called, was recently sent back to Washtenaw County's 22nd Circuit Court over objections of Ann Arbor city attorneys. Footing drain disconnection ordinance, as you know, established a program under which property owners can be required to disconnect their footing drains from the city's sanitary sewer system. Its intent is to diminish the risk of sanitary overflows into the Huron River and sanitary sewage backups in homeowners' basements. I can't go into detail in this in the time that I have, but the suit basically claims inverse condemnation, the taking of private property without just compensation. But if the suit is decided against the city, the likely possibilities are, and we should be aware of them, is that it would stop FDDP, would stop the offset mitigation program if it was decided against that program, which would then eliminate subsidies that are currently provided for developers. Is part of it. That FDDP is a part of every developer agreement. A2 sanitary sewer system would be closed to new development. The issue of inadequate city sewers infrastructure would have to be addressed. 413, East Huron, and other projects cannot mitigate sanitary sewer inflow. Above ground sewage storage is required. My time is up. I'll say one more. 413 and other buildings under construction will not be able to obtain certificate of occupancy from the city. And this would also affect the University of Michigan's plan to do a graduate dorm because they're using the same sewage system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. We have communications from DDA members.
Just a couple of things. First, a report on the connector management, connector study management committee. We met yesterday. We met with an expert in FTA funding, Federal Transportation Administration funding. The ultimate hope of this project and expectation, I think, is that half of the construction funds for it will come from a federal grant from the FTA. Personally, that addressed the management committee has been working in this basically his whole life, and gave us a lot of good ideas on how to successfully present both the request grant for the next phase of the study, which is the environmental impact, as well as the ultimate construction. Probably the most encouraging part of that was when he looked at our way we model what ridership would be on this 20 years out based on what it is now. The numbers for this connector are just phenomenal. We would easily be at probably the top project as far as cost of the project versus prospective riders in the nation. In fact, he suggested that we have some FTA officials come in here in the fall when the students are back and the cafes are out, because they won't believe our numbers when we put them to them. They'll have to actually see it for themselves about how much activity is on that corridor currently. So we do have a planned public meeting on September 17th in the evening at the library to bring the public up to date on the conclusions of this alternatives analysis. We're sort of polishing things up and taking care of some final issues during the summer, and be presenting everything in the fall. And I would like to also comment on Ray's that past zoning aren't necessarily mistakes. They might be differences of opinion, but changes in the zoning doesn't mean the past zoning was a mistake. It means maybe views have changed by the public, or at least some of the public. Having spent 3 years on the A2D2 study, I sort of object to it being called a mistake. That's all.
Anything else? Anybody? Go ahead, John.
A couple of things coming up related to the Downtown Street Framework Plan. There's an advisory committee meeting on Tuesday, June 10th at 9 a.m. here. And the second thing is that there's a public meeting on June 12th. Open house starts at 6:30. Presentation feedback, it's from 7 to 8 p.m. And that's going to be at the multi-purpose room of the downtown library. And we're encouraging any and all to come and give some input.
Steve?
City Council has approved a fiscal year 15 budget. The budget includes 3 additional police officers, 2 for the city's community engagement unit and 1 for traffic enforcement, additional firefighter, an additional rental housing inspector, and also one-time funding for $1 million for street tree maintenance. And fiscal year, that spending plan will begin July 1st.
Thank you. Anything else? I did want to note that the Main Street lights are well underway on replacement, probably better than half done now. And from what I hear, it's a significant difference. If you were to go down there tonight, you can look one way and see how much brighter they are, and look to the old lights. So that project's just about done. Okay, pages 2 through 14, we've got the May 2014 meeting minutes. Somebody move approval.
I'll move.
Support.
Any changes, additions, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They're approved. Subcommittee reports. We start off with the Partnership Economic Development Communication Committee. Joan, you want to start us off?
I don't know if it's part of the economic development part, but the grant in support of the housing need and target report. That is on pages 15 through 17. I'd like to move this resolution.
Support.
So this is where the DDA is being asked to contribute $37,500 to help support this housing needs assessment. At our last partnerships meeting, we just kind of fleshed this out about what we were being asked to do. This would be helpful, useful to the DDA as well as to all the other governmental units, because we wouldn't be operating in the dark if we were asked to provide for housing, affordable housing. We know what the needs are, so we're not just appropriating. We've talked about this before, and just putting money into a pot without knowing what that pot's going to go to. This is more identifying what the housing needs are in the community so that we'll know about it. And this report uniquely is also going to look at workforce housing needs. So when we talk about affordable housing in this community, people all often think of the below poverty kind of housing, but we're also going to be looking at workforce housing. So I know Mary Jo Callan is here. If you want to come just say a couple of words about how this is going to proceed.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Joan. I'm going to call Paul Montano up in a minute to answer any questions. But essentially, this is an updated and enhanced affordable housing needs assessment. As Joan pointed out, we think it's important to include a range of affordable housing, and what we know is that affordability varies depending on income. We think it's important to include that workforce strata in there. We have retained a consultant to help conduct this needs assessment. And this particular consultant was chosen because of his familiarity both with doing affordable housing needs assessments, specifically understanding how markets work, and specifically in college towns. So that was one question that the committee had specifically last time, and we think that's an important piece, obviously, for Ann Arbor especially. So we expect this to be a significant undertaking with lots of community engagement, lots of meetings and focus groups with stakeholders, and the product is planned for late fall. Again, we think that, as Joan pointed out, we know we need affordable housing. We think it's important to put some numbers around that. How much, for whom, located where. We're obviously, I work for the county, but we know that each community has its own particular needs around affordable housing, and we want to flesh that out. So in the assessment itself, we will call out some specific localized areas, the DDA, the Ann Arbor DDA being one of them, the city of Ann Arbor being another, and then Pittsfield, Ypsilanti, and Ypsilanti Township, especially along the urban core, all called out and really engaged around their own specialized needs and community assets and issues. We also, just to add, and then I'll shut up, just to add, we also are overlaying transit and transportation. We know that access is critical, and affordable housing is great, but it's only great if it's if you can access jobs, services, et cetera. So this is an innovation in this needs assessment that we didn't really dig as deeply in last time. We'll have an overlay of how transit and the transit system fits with this discussion about affordable housing. So we're happy to answer questions.
Go ahead, John.
I think it's significant for folks too to know that there's a budget of $150,000. We're a 25% stakeholder in that, with the half of it being provided by the Sustainable Communities Grant, and the other quarter through the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board. at the city. So just so folks kind of know, and it's an up to, it's a maximum amount, and there's, as a matter of fact, a little buffer in there in case additional services are required.
It is an up to amount. I think that's important for certainly this board to know and for city council to know. So we have committed $75,000 of the HUD Sustainable Communities Planning Grant to be devoted to this. Obviously, affordable housing, transit, jobs are fundamental to community sustainability. So we will deploy that $75,000 for sure. And then our current estimate is about $92,000, but we expect, as happened last time, as happens in any major community undertaking, that we may add additional components, we may add additional outreach and engagement. So it is an up to amount. We, certainly aim to have it be lower than that 37.5.
And Mary Jo, what's the timeline?
The timeline is, so we have engaged a consultant. We will undertake the work with the consultant. I'm pointing now towards Brett Leonard is also here from our office. So we're talking with the consultant, giving him a lay of the land. A community engagement process will start very soon. We have a couple of major planned community engagement opportunities probably in September and October for a product, a report, like we're shooting for the end of November, but certainly this year we want to be able to deliver a product to all of you. You will be engaged also along the way, just so you know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So if there aren't any other questions or discussions about it,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
we have another resolution coming from partnerships, and that is to approve the creation of a DDA Partnerships grant program. And we've been talking about this for quite a long time. You'll recall that our grant program was, let's call it lying dormant for quite a long period. And so this is it's the way that we will structure working with private developers. And so we have to have some sort of guidelines because we can't just do it catch as catch can. And this sets out some guidelines similar. We sort of based it a little bit on the how we did the brownfield policy, although in this sense, it's going in a way a different direction. We started asking the question, what can this private developer do for us and for our downtown and the rest of the community? And so it incorporates in here how they are eligible to really be eligible, and I'll let everybody read this, it's kind of lengthy on their own, but in order to be eligible, they have to do, it's more than just that development's own site that has to be included in where the benefits are. So it's that we're seeking particular benefits as a DDA, and this particular site contributes to the benefits that we are seeking. So in that sense, it's a true partnership, not simply a gift to someone who wants to develop. So I think, Amber, do you want to, are there some things that you would like to point out that are different here, or?
Sure, I can point out kind of the two areas that I worked with city staff on. So given the parameters that Joan was discussing, I reached out to city staff in systems planning, project management, and the staff member who oversees the CIP process. And we looked primarily at the eligible improvements section that's on your first page of the draft grants, and filled that in to identify the opportunities that aren't usually required under site plan, as Joan was speaking to, but then also that last sentence in the eligible improvements paragraph highlights that partnership piece, which is if the developer undertakes these broader public improvements, then the public improvements adjacent to their site also become eligible, so very similar to 618. And then the other piece that we talked about was the process, which is the last component of the draft. And we felt it would be helpful to have this grant process happen at the same time that staff are reviewing the plan at the city, because that's the perfect opportunity for staff to see additional public improvement opportunities. Any other questions?
Adds to downtown's residential density, so any project with housing would qualify.
The list that you see on page 20, that was created by the partnerships committee, and that staff didn't tweak. We left that's really up to the committee.
And really,
It could qualify.
right, and
Would
it should address significant elements of the list, so it's not a single item, but it's a significant aggregated.
Yeah, I just would not want every student housing project to qualify for a partnerships grant.
Right, it has to be a package of all of these.
I got a question. Related to that, this is obviously a finite list, and there may be, if this program goes on, the next X number of years, things may change that we may want to either delete from this or add to it. Can it be viewed as a living document, or what would be, just looking at over the years, people kind of forget, and it's hard to kind of keep that continuity. I guess my question is, how can we keep this as a living document? It's something that would be worth our thinking through a little bit. 'Cause I could imagine some of these things, once we fulfill certain, large office floor plate, say all of a sudden there's a boom on that and it's done. We'd like to be able to modify this.
So some amount of discussion at the committee talked exactly about that downtown is evolving, and these guidelines should be evolutionary as well. So if you look on page 21 under the grant details, actually a little further, the policy changes, what we're stating up front is we continually will be looking at this, and we reserve all rights to continually make changes. Because as city priorities change, as the developments change, everything about that, just as you described, will need to be evolutionary. But the central goal would be how to use a private development strategy to accomplish public benefits. That is sort of in the heart of this, although the details themselves may shift. So you as a board, if we're approving this, are publicly stating, we reserve the right to make changes as this thing goes forward throughout on any part of this.
I think the related piece to me is that to make sure that developers sort of understand, what's worth spending the time and the effort to go after, and things make sense. So there may be things that drop off the list or get added on the list as time goes by. That's really my only real qualm about this moving forward is there enough in there to get developers interested in doing it? I think that's my only slight reservation about it.
So one piece about that as well, I've been here for a long time, and years ago we had a facade improvement program, and the same concern was registered at that point. And in an interesting way, that had an ebb and a flow, and you haven't heard much about it in the recent past, because in fact, there was no developer interest. And those kind of programs are actually kind of nice that way, that it's not meant to supplant market forces. It's meant to be supportive of our goals. And if in fact there isn't a developer interest in doing things beyond their own site, then that may not be a strategy that they want to follow. The program itself may fall away, and that's probably as it should be.
I also think with the street framework plan, as that is finished, that this should absolutely be reassessed, the list, and say what elements do we want to pull off of that and insert on our priority list. But that could be, it's a good reason to go and revisit it at that point.
Anybody have any other questions or discussion on that?
I just have a quick one. Is there, and I looked over and I didn't find it, but it might well be in here, any type of limitation on kind of the number and amount that can go out in a year, just so we don't end up with, 10 proposals that all meet all of our requirements and we get stuck having to get all of them.
So the benefit is that any grant is paid subsequent to receiving the tax dollars. So we will never be behind the tax dollars
Gotcha.
received. And the tax dollars are a calculator. So it's not a rebate of the tip, but it is a grant based on what projects taxes will be.
Right, and it happens, and it's not paid until after those taxes are collected.
Correct. In fact, if they don't pay their taxes, they are ineligible to receive any of the grant money.
I'd like to thank the Partnerships Committee for its work on this policy, this program. I think it's much improved over some of the earlier drafts, and I know that improvement came from the discussions regarding how to balance the general policy guidelines and what is desired by the DDA with some specifics. So we're not picking and choosing. There's a consistent framework that I know will be helpful for us, and I anticipate will be helpful for developers. And as our director said, if it's not helpful for developers, that will be, I think, become evident, and we can adjust as necessary. So, thank you.
Likewise, it was, I think it was very helpful to have this as coordinated part of the capital improvements plan. So that's a change that's come about that I think has been really helpful.
Any further concerns, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We now have a new policy in place.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. That takes something off of our partnerships agenda. It's been on there, yeah, for a long time. So with regard to the downtown marketing update, Rishi or Al, do you want to talk about that stuff?
Yeah, so, excuse me, in our partnerships meeting, we talked about a few different things that we wanted to focus on from a data perspective to help us determine what our ultimate goal was, what our final steps were in order to determine how best to help market downtown, and the key word there being help, not solely do it, not go out on our own and do it, but to help with the area associations, the CVB, and be a partner in it. So we're currently exploring, we're in pilot phase with a couple different ideas that we have. We're waiting for some feedback results on Ladies Night that the Main Street Area Association put together that kind of tried to push some sales and push some traffic at what's normally not a high traffic time. In Partnerships Committee, we came up with some pretty cool ideas about utilizing parking data to help determine that. We are investigating using a startup in Ann Arbor to help us look at macro data on purchasing in the downtown. So it's like a multi-pronged attack to see what are all the different avenues that we can gather data to help us make our decision and essentially get the most bang for our buck, and not just put money out there into events, but or into advertising or into a website without knowing that we have a metric in which to gauge that success or failure off of. It may be failure, it's marketing, but if we can gauge whether it is a success or failure, that would be an overall success. So not a lot of tangible, we decided on this, but just a lot more in the loop. We're reaching out to the area associations again, and we'll be reaching out to the CVB again. So we're also kind of up against Art Fair, which is coming up in a month and a half, as we're all
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Thank you, Cindy. So generally, our timing is not great for engaging in the retailers in the community because as Cindy pointed out, they all have that on the top of their minds. So. But we're working. We've set that as a deadline to try to get some of these things going, so that we can get some data and start to make some decisions before we get back into a school year and things like that, football season, and then get affected by data that tells us that people are showing up here, it's busy, you know, but you know what is because of our marketing, or what is because of decisions made, and what is because of football Saturdays and so on. So if I missed anything, feel free to.
I mean, unless anybody wants more detail on any of that at this point.
Yeah.
We wouldn't understand it anyway.
I just make up words and I look to him to see whether they're actually mean something or not.
It's funny, I always thought it was the other way around.
He's the puppet master.
So I think that with that, I'm done, and our next committee meeting will be Wednesday, June 11th.
Thank you, Joe. Operations.
Right. First, we have one of our annual rituals that we hope won't be a ritual next year, but has been, or I believe all the time I've been on the board. State law requires that we amend our budget so that we do not overspend expenses above the level we were budgeted to. There are two areas in which we have overspent this year. And well, first of all, let me move the resolution to amend the budget.
Support.
Okay. If we go to page 30 first, for the detail of the parking budget, you look toward the bottom. There's a $1.6 million increase in the budget for the First and Washington parking structure. This is the final cash payment for that structure. The reason we are amending the budget is this expenditure had been budgeted for last fiscal year, the one that ended in June of a year ago. We were contractually prohibited from paying that amount until the project, the First and Washington parking garage, received a certificate of occupancy from the city, which it had not done by the end of last fiscal year. So this is quite simply money that we did not spend last fiscal year because the contract prohibited us from doing so and until there was a certificate of occupancy. So we were spending that money this year instead. It's basically out of not spent in one year and spent in the next. The second one, which I believe is on 28, 25, 29. There's 29. Thank you. This is in the housing fund. We had budgeted expenditures of $400,000 for this fiscal year also for the First and Washington project for 4 permanently affordable housing units in that apartment complex. After our budget had been set, there was a request from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission for several projects, and the conversion to vouchers and also redevelopment plans for their properties. The second one being first for $300,000, the second for $200,000. I believe the $200,000 is per year for 3 years, if I'm correct. So that shows an increase of $500,000, as well as the $37,500 that we fortunately just passed earlier. So we are amending the budget by a total of $537,500. And I should point out what those requests are not only from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, but also from members of City Council as well. And since we want to be good partners with City Council, we certainly, and the Housing Commission, we agreed to those, and we need to amend the budget to reflect that. Those are the only two issues.
Just to clarify, the Housing Commission redevelopment projects were focused on Baker Commons and Miller Manor, either in or near downtown.
Correct.
It's not generically for all their properties.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Are there any questions?
Very good. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Should also point out, before I turn it over to John, We also have a list of and parking information on page 23 that lists the monthly permits by month in each facility for those who have an interest in how many monthly permits we give out.
I'm on the 7th floor every morning.
We'll get into parking demand at some future meeting.
Could you hand those down this way?
Oh, sure.
I have a last minute handout here. I'm sorry, are you finished up?
I'm finished with the budget, but yes.
There is a resolution on the last page of the board packet, which I would like to move.
Second?
We have been requested, and for those of you who are not familiar with, if you're not a library patron, don't get to that part of town often. When we built the underground parking structure, we also were involved in regrading the street, which needed to be done for purposes of water flow, drainage. And in so doing, we changed level of the street. We were dealing with the library front entrance, and we had to deal with that difference in elevation somehow. We couldn't just pour a slab on the sidewalk that wasn't level. So we dealt with that by adding a step, and that step has never been terribly convenient for anyone. And now that the library has decided that they want to change their front entrance, we have been asked to get rid of that step, and I think rightly so. So this resolution will allow us to spend the money to take care of that part of the project, which is in the public right-of-way. The library is paying for the renovations, the changes to on their property up to their front door. We have been requested to spend money to take care of that part of the sidewalk that is in the public right-of-way. And we are not actually doing the work ourselves. They have a design team in Form Studios who's designing. O'Neill Construction is handling the construction. We are simply being asked to finance, and that is up to $125,000 for that section of sidewalk. Originally, we were talking about $100,000, but some members of the committee were curious about possible enhancements. So we upped that amount a bit. And I think that in the long run, it's going to end up being less expensive than that. That was just an up to amount, and we felt that that covered all of the contingencies.
Should point out too that the library is one of the taxing authorities that we receive TIF revenue from. So this is in partnership with one of our taxing partners.
Yeah, I just want to strongly support it because it's so in our wheelhouse, the DDA's wheelhouse, in terms of walkability, and especially because this is right by a newly opening transit center, and of course, our regular partnerships with the library, and infrastructure being one of our other strong points. And this, of course, deals with the pedestrian infrastructure and basically just being good partners with those neighbors, the library and Lake Transit Center. So I strongly support it.
John, I see that there are a couple of mechanical parking meters along here. Are those going to go back in, or do we have ability to put in the machines?
I am not sure if the new, I'm assuming those are going back in for the time being, but I don't know where we're planning on putting the new e-park system, if it is in front of the library.
Yeah, and we're kind of holding off on that because one of the questions we're still waiting to see is when the new transit center opens. That mall has the buses going the opposite way than they used to. And it's not clear yet as they make that right turn. Some of them then have to head up William. How many of those parking meters may actually need to get removed? So we're kind of taking a wait and see as the evolution of the transit center and the library and so forth continues to take shape. We'll know more and at that point make some kind of decision around the equipment.
Again, our long-range plans are to replace most of the old style meters eventually.
Yeah.
I'll ask the Question, so from a budget standpoint, do we feel, is there a thought on like, adding this project into our planning, and, was there any thought of what this replaces, or does it not replace anything, and we're okay with the budget?
Well, in the larger sense, we have money allocated for sidewalk work. We've been sort of holding off on where that sidewalk work might take place until we have the streetscape framework plan in place, and then start prioritizing it. So this is essentially jumping the queue on what projects we might do, although there really isn't a queue at this point.
Right.
We're still trying to figure out what it's going to look like and then in what order. So yes, there's money in the budget for this, but we haven't allocated to specific projects, so we're not necessarily taking away from another project or any specific project at this point.
It's just something we have to be cognizant of in the future when we get to that prioritization of that. Okay.
And I think the street framework plan's supposed to be done the end of this year, correct? So I would think early next year we would start looking at how we prioritize construction.
And the point of doing this now is the timing. Makes it appropriate to do it while the construction's happening. It's what's going to make it probably nowhere close to 125,000, whereas if we were to do it independently, it would be probably in excess of.
John, have you seen the plans for the redesign for the entry to the library? Could you describe as what you know about?
They were not at all finalized when we had our last meeting. I don't know if Susan sees.
Yeah,
it might be helpful
I
for
can do
people
it
to know
fairly.
How does the step magically disappear?
It is magic, isn't it? The opportunity in working with the library gives us the chance we didn't have at the last go, which is because the entire area is being opened up. The whole area will be regraded. And at the end, what you'll see, instead of 2 steps, there'll be 4 steps up at the library. That then enables the portion that's west of it to be flattened. When we were doing our work with the garage and the streetscape, we were not really at a place where that was possible. But now with the regrading, those 4 steps will happen at the same time that steps to the north of the library will be eliminated that then lead to Library Lane. They'll now become a walkway. So all of that regrading is now made possible. It is magic. It's the magic of construction.
Well, I think one way to view it is that it's really an unfinished phase of the work from redoing Fifth. What was put in there with the step, I think everybody hoped was a very temporary installation from a safety and convenience point of view. So
Yeah, and
I
again,
think it's kind of a way to look at finishing up that project.
We were dealing with a grade change from street to library as it existed. Now that elevation change will take place on the library property versus part of it in the public right of way, essentially.
And we're fairly comfortable that it's going to be at least relatively cohesive with what ends up coming out of the street framework and the other projects we have going on there. It's not, obviously we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it's,
I hope that it's
thoughtfully
cohesive
done.
with what we've already done along Fifth
Right.
Avenue,
Yeah.
which happened before the street framework plan, but I think that it will tie, everything will tie
Yeah.
in together in terms of on Fifth Avenue and with the library.
I can't imagine that, given that we've gone down to 2 lanes with bike lanes on there, that we would think of expanding the sidewalk, for instance, in that area.
Right.
The sidewalk probably as wide as it can get.
Yeah.
And, and on the point of jumping the queue, I think it's always good to have long-term plans and stick to your budget, but there are going to always be small opportunities where we have to take advantage of a timing issue and we may have to jump the queue.
That's the advantage of having a long-term plan, is that when opportunities come up, you can actually do them.
Seems like we've thoroughly covered that. Ready to vote? Excellent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
Next on the list, summer sidewalk maintenance efforts. And I unfortunately was not able to accompany Susan. Was Joe Maynard with you? Was that the individual? Okay. Susan and Joe did a walk around, which we do every every late spring, early summer, just walking around looking for trip hazards, small maintenance issues on the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and the street. And they did that last week. Again, sort of, these things will be taken care of over the course of the summer. Our budget for this work this year, do you have it off the top of your head?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think we have 75,000, maybe 100,000 set aside.
Okay, and that's what we've been spending in that
Thereabouts.
scope. A lot of the work will be small concrete repairs, relaying brick, those sorts of things. So again, just wanted to update you that had taken place.
And just one small addition, it is a complement to the city's own sidewalk millage program repairs, where we found good partnership with the city. The city is working on sidewalk repairs between the building face and then 6 feet from that. Most of our efforts are in what you might describe as the extension, the amenities section. And that's where you're going to find the brick, the tree pits, that kind of thing. And so a lot of this is brick, that through the winter, for instance, these are heaving, need to get replaced. So we're working in complement with and in concert with the city.
And going forward, again, these small repairs that don't involve sidewalk next to them, we can do whenever the timing permits us. But we also hope to coordinate more with the city in terms of when they're redoing the sidewalk, if there is major work to be done between the sidewalk and the curb. Again, it may help us to coordinate with them going forward.
Main Street Biz expansion, who's got that?
Who would like to take Main Street Biz? Keith?
I certainly could. Just about anyone who was there, I guess, could. We were updated on the efforts of the Main Street Biz to expand. The ones, property owners directly adjacent had been interested in participating when they saw the success of the Main Street Biz. So it's actually increasing the size 150%, I believe it is. It won't go any further north than Huron or south than William as it does now, but it expands to Ashley on the west.
On the
and
east.
On the east and
Fifth on the west.
Fifth on the west.
Excluding the federal building
No,
block.
I had it right. I had it right first. Ashley on the west, Fifth on the east.
The east side of the street.
Right, and
Yeah. Sorry.
no, I mean to the right. Yes, the east side of the street to the west. There we go. Excluding the federal building. And we were asked in support of a voluntary effort or contribution, something we've already been doing with the polio lot, where even though we're not a part of, because we're a government entity, we can't be a part of the biz itself. But while they are doing snow removal in that area, we've agreed to be assessed essentially the same lineal foot formula as the rest of the biz, so that we can be a part of that. So everything gets removed at the same time, and it isn't just shoveling, it's actually removal. And this, of course, would expand it because of the Fourth and William parking structure. Is there another one? Oh, and the Klein lot.
And Fourth and Washington.
Downtown Streetlight Retrofit Program update.
So I can take that.
Thank you.
At our last meeting, we put forward a request to the board to consider a grant that would enable us to transition the remaining streetlights downtown, which are the ones owned by DTE, to the LED technology. And some very valid points were raised by the board members, which I took back in a meeting with staff. And in that conversation, we all saw merit in both of the comments. The first one was, how does this line up with our other priorities? And as we were describing this, we have many things that are sitting in the CIP, and there was a lot of resonance with that question. And as importantly, the other question that we got, which was, how does this line up with the street framework plan? And that also had resonance with staff, because an example was, as a part of the framework processes, we may as a community decide that a goal would be to remove all those Cobra heads from downtown. That in fact, we'd like to have all of downtown be that pedestrian scale lighting, and that to make an investment at this point until we finish that process really didn't make much sense. So for both reasons, staff resonated with your questions. So we've put it on hold. So effectively, that resolution you saw before, we should assume is tabled, if not permanently, certainly till after framework plan. And if we feel it's important, we'll bring it back.
Thank you. And the next committee meeting, Wednesday, June 25th at 11 a.m. Other DDA business. Seeing none, other audience participation. 4 minutes each, you do not need to sign up in advance. Please.
Somebody would be nice to tell me for 2 minutes so I can prepare the end.
Yep, make sure you step in front of the microphone.
Okay. Right. My name is Chang Ming Fan, inventor of Tiny Light, president of Tiny Light World. We like to use our technology, help Ann Arbor develop in many respects. I'd like to give some comments first for the help I received from everybody, especially the city staff. Mr. Hughie in Crescent gave me a lot of important information and time to let me understand the city, how it is so good, what structure it is about, and what is the future development goals and plans. And also some other people who really gave me a lot of advice. I also attending quite a lot of meetings, city hall meetings, DDA meetings, and our district library meetings, and I visit the home which has been built or already been built for both the affordable housing and also the Delaware Center. I learned quite a lot. And today I'm kind of very sad to say that June 4th is the day marks the differences between the two countries. I belong to two countries, in Chinese American. 25 years ago, today, maybe 100, maybe 1,000 people been killed in Tiananmen Square. But it's so quiet now. The whole world talking about this, but so quiet over there. It's obviously a different kind of system. How we should be appreciate the democratic system and hard work people have really contributed to this country, to this town, and also not only push this economic development of Ann Arbor forward and set a model for not only the rest of the city in this country, like we are the first city, 2007, using LED light, put on the street, pioneered the thing, and also set a model to all of the world. This is democratic country, city system, give us benefit everybody. What I like to point it out, one thing what I understand that is how important to be in this information era, not using the information to solve the most important problem, social problem, economic problem, environmental problem. Not. We have a lot of things can do, we should do. That's why we're here, using Tiny Light. Is it 3 minutes?
Good.
It's getting there.
Just about.
Okay, I'm trying to quickly wrap up. The point I'm talking about is that the infrastructure have two parts. One is the tangible part. We talk so many of it. Another part is the intangible part. Community and communication. Communication is a media. We can see the media people here helps us great, especially both digital and also participate in all the meetings, tell us no. But it is a problem. It's not enough. There's something missing. What I'm talking about is that technology of the new media is the mid-tech media is not there. And that's why the Tiananmen Square and Occupy Wall Street and terrorize all of Egypt, all failed. Because of that the meat tech is not there. You use all kinds of ways, shouting, fighting the banners. So what I like to do, just 1 second. We have to work together, create a new kinds of media. That's why we're talking about tiny light or tiny airline. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other audience participation? Seeing none, move to adjourn. Support.